My name is Anna, and now I'm turning into the first speaker of this event, talking about an ideal learner and trying to find the answer to this question together with you. So what we're going to talk about today, we're going to look at ideals, at ideal learners, good learners, and see what can happen there. We're going to look at the 3 M's of a good or ideal learner. We'll see that now. Some teacher roles, what the roles of us as teachers are. Then the learning environment, what it can be, how it should be, memory development activities. I am personally very interested in the topic of psychology of language learning, cognitive linguistics, and memory development. Been working on my own for the past year. And I'm very sure that this is one of the key factors in understanding how language works in the learner's head. Yeah. Okay. Then, yeah, the objects are still there. That's the chat. That's my chat box, and apologies for that. I'll try to fix it. We'll try. Just give me a minute. Yeah, that's the chat box. I hope it doesn't distract you much. There's not going to be much text on this side of the screen. So please just take it as a piece of art and piece of our presentation today. Yeah, that's it. Yes, black squares are chat. That's a chat, the black square. Anyway, thank you very much. Then there is a growth and fixed mindset and research done by a professor at Stanford University that we're going to finish our session today with. I will hope and be very thankful for your active participation in the chat box, and let's stay in touch there. The first statement I'd like to begin with is that an ideal learner and generally looking for ideals can be quite subjective. When we say an ideal learner, we might be looking for a student with a certain set or a number of characteristics that we as teachers want to see in them. However, if we ask our students, they might have a very different concept of what an ideal learner is. And I even tried and experimented that with my students. And then if we are looking for an ideal learner, why don't we then think that our learners might be doing the same for the teachers? So ideal learner, ideal teacher, setting high standards, putting on pressure, is it that necessary? And how to work with that? And why do we need that? Let's think about these things together today. My personal opinion in the experience of teaching, which is now more than 14 years, is that good is enough, or a good learner is great. That's already enough. A good learner is also subjective. That's something, that I understand my way, you guys might understand your way, and we might have different concepts for that. So let's now think ourselves what a good learner is to you as teachers. So when I say, oh, that's a good learner, oh, she's an ideal student, she's brilliant as a student or a learner, a person who learns and who perhaps it's, you take as an example learner. Yes. Can you continue the sentence? Thank you very much. I love talking to teachers. They already know what to do before you say your text till the end. That's just amazing. Yeah. And a good learner is motivated. Absolutely. Yes. Determined, hardworking, responsible, curious, engaged. Oh my God, I'm not free. Oh, wow. It's just the chat is racing with words. Well motivated, curious, excited, active, sparked, curious. Yeah. Wow. Great. Thank you very much. Yeah, so you definitely have your own understanding. We are more or less on the same page with motivation, curiosity, being active, wanting to learn, and some other things. Here, let's see what we might have mentioned or might have not, and whether that could be helpful in understanding what makes a good learner from the methodology perspective, from the perspective of having a lesson and working with them in the classroom. So a good learner, yes, moving a chat. Oh, yes, thank you. A good learner is the one that has positive attitude, and positive attitude is when they say, I can do it, irregardless of my mistakes, for example, or irregardless of that, I don't understand something. They are good listeners, and those skills and those characteristics, they are more characteristics, not skills, they can be called transferable, which means that it's true for language learners, English in our case, and it's true for any kind of learner, any kind of person, or a person who's learning something. So a good learner is a good listener. They're able to share ideas. Even when we teachers go and take a teaching qualification course like a CELTA or a DELTA, we need those characteristics in order to succeed and work together in a group. Yes, so they are asking when they need help. They have good concentration, or they try, and then they do their homework, perhaps, hopefully, but not always that's a sign of a good learner. Not afraid to get things wrong, and they have perseverance. Now, asking questions mostly. Yeah, Oksana, yes, thank you in the chat. There are several comments you're adding to the table. Thank you very much to the infographic. So they are asking questions. Yes, a good learner asks questions. They are good listeners. They are good speakers. Being a good speaker is definitely a plus. Yes. Now, let's look at the statement here and think how that affects our teaching. So the statement goes, the beliefs about how people learn inform everything we do in classrooms. I want you to read it once again and try to interpret to yourselves. Try to see what it means to you. The beliefs about how people learn, so our beliefs as teachers about how our students learn the language, how it happens in their head, actually informs everything we do in classrooms. We say that there is life before and after CELTA, sometimes same as before and after DELTA. And a lot of people, including me, have said that before CELTA, it was mostly subconsciously or intuitively that you were doing some things. But then when you get to the course, you understand that this works because, and this is a good technique because there is a certain physiological, psychological, theoretical, methodological explanation to it, which is proven by experience and years. And teaching approaches and methods influence greatly. So before, teachers used to think that people learn a language when they read and translate and do grammar exercises. That's the basis of the language, and that's how we should learn. Now we believe, and we are great, great teachers are very eager adopters and probably promoters of the communicative approach. So we believe that everything that is taught in English and the language has to be learned in communication, in communicative situations, context, and people have to talk. And that is because there are certain language theories and certain methodology gurus, researchers, scientists who have proven that this is how the language works. Yes, from GTM to BB. Yes, Tatiana, thank you. Yes, from grammar translation method to project-based learning. Yes, could be that shift if it happens within a short period of time. That's a great breakthrough. So we are moving on to what factors affect learning and the learning of the language in the classroom, and they contribute to the learners being good or to the teachers being effective. So when we talk about an ideal learner or a good learner, it's still a two-way process. Any kind of learning, as I would say, any kind of relationship, be it a working one, a personal one, is a product of two sides, of two people, or two parties taking place and taking active part in it. So when we talk about that, we have to always keep in mind that there's a teacher with his role, which we're going to look at, and there's a learner that will either will or will not react. So there are 3 M's: motivation, memory, and mindset that affect the learner's performance in the classroom and outside. Motivation is a thing we have mentioned in the chat. It's a concept discussed and talked about, and it's not a new thing. And at the conferences or somewhere when people say, let's talk about motivation, and we're like, okay, 100 whatever time, but still, this is often, and it's not it's not a topic not to talk about, even if we've heard about it 100 times before. Still, student motivation is very often a black box to us, especially if we talk about teenagers, for instance. Yes, their motivation can be very different. Adult motivation, this is closely connected to psychology, behavior, and social factors. But that's one of the key elements that drives students to learn English, or to keep learning at least. It's different in schools, of course. School children learn English because, that's a school program, but still we want them to succeed. Language schools, we need to make sure that people study with us as long as possible. That's motivation as well. So let's look at each of those, and we'll begin with factors that affect learner motivation. So the factors that affect motivation could be different. And we personally ask our students, why are you learning English in this or that form? When I teach a group, that's my first lesson, the needs analysis that we do. Why are you here? What do you need English for? Sometimes by asking them that question, we provoke their own thinking and their own analysis of where they can apply their English language knowledge. Personal goals, that's one of the very common answers for themselves, for something they want to achieve. A huge, according to recent research, and I'm going to talk about it today too, a huge part of the learner motivation factor is the teacher himself, his methodology, personality, their rapport, their communication that they're building. So the teacher is one of the actually key figures in learner motivation, especially language learning. And I'm sure when we think about our own school years, we can all remember a teacher who, I hope we can, the teacher who inspired us, the teacher who made us be interested in the subject, the teacher who we have good associations with. And then there was a teacher who demotivated us on the other side. And same here, personality and the teaching relationship with the students is becoming more and more important, especially with the era of online, especially with the lack of real human communication, with all these social and economic situations going on. We see that this is more and more important now. Yes, motivation is an influential factor in the teaching learner situations. Sarah, yes, I agree. Thank you. Yes, Alina, thank you for your comment too. The learning environment is the place either online or in the classroom where they spend their time. And there are some things that we have to take into account as well. Students' progress, of course, very important. When we look at these factors, it is important to remember that they work in a system. It's not like if we have one or two, the others are not important. Those are basically pillars of learner motivation. Oftentimes, that's not the comprehensive list. There can be much more, but those usually work together. So let's say, for example, the learner understands their goal, why they are here. They like the teacher, but the learning environment is not favorable. For example, they don't like the group, they don't get along with people. There are people who they are irritated with or annoyed. That could become a demotivating factor. Their progress, they like the teacher, they have their goals, they like the group, but they feel that they're coming in and just spending a good time, saying some English words, producing something in English, but they don't feel they're progressing. That can also affect and lead to the loss of motivation. So those usually work together. Personal goals. Can you think of examples that you have heard from your own students why they're learning English? You have asked them perhaps what happened, why they were in your classroom or studying with you, and what the reason for them to learn English was. Can you please share in the chat box? I'm learning English too, and think of your students. My parents said so, to study abroad, travel, to marry a foreigner, immigrate, to pass some tests. I was forced to. That's not a good answer. Watch movies, understand songs, to make my parents happy. Wow, to have a better salary, to travel. Yeah, to get a well-paid job, career move. I just like it, but no homework. Future learning, to pass exams, and international language. Yeah, to communicate with people all over the world. Wow, great. Thank you very much. The answers we often receive from our students are the following. They want to get a promotion at their job or move on in the career ladder, study abroad, we've mentioned that, in the university, for example, pass an international exam, Cambridge or others, develop personally, read and watch primary sources of information, to become an English teacher. Yes, Yulia, thank you very much. That was my last point here. Some of them are really learning English to become an English teacher, and that's honorable. And that's a very rewarding job to do, definitely. I hope we all agree. So the role of the teacher, they are sometimes exaggerating it, sometimes not giving it much attention, but we as teachers, I think it's a very useful now to understand our position in terms of working with groups of students. Anna, we have a question from you. Do we need to post questions here in the chat box or on Telegram? If you have a question about what I'm saying right now, a comment or a question, you can do it here, and I'll try to do my best not to miss it. If I miss it, apologies, please send it into the chat. In the chat, you can ask any questions related to what we're talking about. So if you feel that this is something that needs an immediate reaction from the speaker, you can do it here. If it's more of a question about the topic and what you think about, what you want us to talk about more, there will be a Q&A at the end of the day today. Please do that in the chat. Okay. Yeah. Welcome. Yeah. Sarah, the quality of teaching, teachers' attitude. Yeah. Students' participation in class. Those are already teachers' roles. Thank you very much. Yes. So my question was actually, the role of the teacher, is it about the teacher being the transmitter of knowledge and or language? Is the teacher, a language, English language teacher, now a transmitter of knowledge to the students? What do you think? Can you show us some reaction or say something in the chat box? Of course, but not only, not only. Maybe partly no, some cases, yeah, not only, wider, both. Okay, right, perfect. Thank you. Well, the teacher does have more knowledge in a certain subject, obviously, English in our case, but we see the teacher now more as a person who guides students through the learning path, who the teacher who oversees it, the person who sees the bigger picture. Yes. Okay. Victoria, you say yes, but there is something else. Please share what? Of course, it's not the comprehensive list. I'm trying to share here the most common things. If you want to say and add, please welcome, because that's just, it makes it even better. Monitor. Yes. So the roles of the teacher here, initiator, the person who initiates, facilitator. A facilitator is a person who makes some process smoother, makes people perhaps who makes it easier to communicate. Motivator, ideal model for many students. A teacher is now a brand and a person to follow. Well, yeah, to many of them, yes. If you become a brand for them, our learners will definitely be more motivated. Moderator, monitoring, yes. As I call it, monitor, yes. Manager, psychologist, planner. Yeah, we are bits of everything, actually. Teaching is such an varied and very different job that we have to take on different roles at times. Mentors, consultants, contributors. Thank you for adding that. Good friend. Yes. Mental supporter here. A teacher is an MFU, which means multifunctional unit, probably. Yeah. Multifunctional unit. That's a great one. That's a good one. Thank you. For small kids, even a clown. Could be. Well, but we have to be careful. Lydia today is going to talk about teaching kids. She's an expert in that, and I'm sure you're going to have something to talk about kids and how to motivate and entertain them. Yes, thank you. So talking about the teachers and the students being ideal and their roles, it's more about a perfect match between the teacher's personality, how they organize the teaching process, how they talk to their students, how they build that rapport, and then the perfect match happens. It's not only about transmitting knowledge, although it is important. Right now, language is perhaps one of the few subjects that cannot be simply Googled and learned. Any other subject, you basically have everything at hand. The information is becoming less valuable, but the teaching role in the language is shifting from telling our students the grammar rules and giving them lists of words to helping them discover it themselves and to helping them become independent learners, because we need to learn English, almost all of our life, and then to training them and teaching them how to learn. Teacher is the dispenser of knowledge, wow, those are beautiful metaphors, Sarah. Dispenser of knowledge, the arbitrator of truth, and the final evaluator of learning. Those are very exciting words. Wow. Thank you very much. Yes, when it comes to teaching English at schools, we also take care of many things related and connected with upbringing and helping children become citizens of the world. And another factor, so we've talked about the learners, the teacher's role, and then another factor that affects motivation is the learning environment that we have to take care, and it has to be safe. What does it mean to you when we say a safe learning environment? There is a comment on the slide, but what does it mean, a safe learning environment? Is it like when nothing falls on their head and, nothing happens or breaks during the lesson? Is that the safe learning environment or something else? What do you think? Trust, no judgments, trustful, trust, e-safety. Absolutely. Yes. When the students aren't afraid to make mistakes, yeah, they're physically comfortable, no mocking, friendly, open, positive. Right. Great. Agree. Absolutely agree. Yes. Safe learning environment is when they're not afraid of being not right, of making mistakes, of sometimes looking a bit silly, foolish, because when we are learning something new, it doesn't matter whether it's English or a new skill. We will be clumsy at first. If we're learning to ride a bike or to dance, it's not going to be perfect. And we expect our teachers not to mock or laugh or scold us or whatever for that, because we're on our way. We're on the road, on the path to getting there. A very common fear among adults, and I mostly teach adults, is a fear of making a mistake, which leads to them being scared of speaking. Tens, perhaps even hundreds of students have that. And one of the reasons is actually that previous learning experience background that they have, that hits in their head that if you make a mistake, people are going to laugh at you, people are going to scold, they're going to look at you like you're stupid, or they're going to say something bad to you. So our jobs are, as teachers, our job is to create that safe learning environment full of trust, and to say, okay, guys, we're all learning, no judgment. We're not saying, bad things about your mistakes. I always say that to my students. Mistakes are a source of information. This is actually an area for improvement. This is, for me, the information of what we need to work on more. For you, this is another exercise. I mean, error correction is one of the greatest practice exercises, one of the very effective ones. And the ability to correct their own mistakes is the best one, and one of the independent learner skills that is very useful in the real world, because when they go somewhere outside, somewhere they travel, they have negotiations in a company, they have a meeting, and then they make a mistake. If they are able to self-correct, that is, great job done. So training them to do that, but patiently, with understanding and no judgment, is very important. Then we have a teacher, as we have already said many times today, as a factor of learner motivation. And it's not about only materials and methodology. Great books and international qualifications are important, but we still have to be people. We have to have a human side of things. We have to have our personality that they will like, or they will at least have something in common with, and then they can feel a bit at ease, more at ease. There is a term when students don't feel at ease, and then they become more comfortable, affective filter. So usually when the group only starts working together, they have their affective filters high. So those are their emotional, say, walls that they build around learners in a new group or with a new teacher. And then they have this affective filter that is kind of protecting them. The teacher personality and teacher's way of interacting with learners can contribute and can help work with that and break those walls. Usually it's not about teaching materials and methodology. We can be, certified with every qualification in the world, but human side and interaction, real interest in them as individuals and people helps, just remove those walls and lower the effective filter down. So what can we do as teachers practically? We talk to our students at the beginning of the class, when they come in, ask them how they're doing, what they've been up to, tell them something about you, something you're not necessarily very private, but something, that shows you from a human perspective. Notice how they learn, what they are struggling with. Notice, take notes. Yeah. And then tell students about the strategies they can use. Everything we talk about today could be transferred to students. I often talk to my adult students, especially business English, about those strategies and what affects their motivation. They are the ones that also need to know. It's not a secret information that only teachers possess. How motivation works is important for every party in the process to know. So talk to them. Perhaps you can help them by just telling them how it works with their motivation and brain. Assess their learning styles. We're not going to talk about auditory and visual today, learners' kinesthetics. We do need to remember that still, but more importantly, we need to make learners aware of that. It's not, again, the teacher who only has to know that. We have to tell them that, and we have to help them work with that. If they have one side developed better or the other one, it's them in the first place who have to know what to do with it. Personalities clash, right? It happens, personality clash. And then you need to, as a teacher, that is then more about classroom management and perhaps leveraging it a bit with some kind of story or a joke, or the ability to switch people from one thing to another and say, okay, guys, enough, I have something else to tell you. That's the strategy link. Yes. Students think. Yes. So we've talked about motivation. Now, that was all about motivation, not everything, but key things for today. Another factor that makes a good learner is memory. A memory, it generally contributes to language learning, and the better it is developed, the easier it is to store the knowledge, like grammar, vocabulary. The easier it is to remember those patterns and how words work together, how sentences are put together. Just a bit of a background on our memory. So the memory, we can group it in different ways, but right now we're interested in sensory memory. It is especially well developed in children when they learn, when they discover the world. Their sensory memory, which means all of the senses, the touch and the hear and the smell, and all of those things are well developed. We perceive information from that source then, and we remember those things. We remember the touches, we remember the smells and things. Short-term memory. Short-term memory is where some of information is stored, most of the incoming information is stored for a short period of time. And then there is a long-term memory that helps us remember and do things for a long time automatically without thinking and without much cognitive effort. So memory, short-term, long-term. We can store information for 15, 30 seconds at once, usually 5 things, perhaps more at a time. And then if we don't do anything with it, it's forgotten. So that's memory works every single second, and we have lots of information coming in. Something is not paid attention to, something can come in and we don't notice it because it's there for just 1 second. We don't pay attention to it and goes away. But then if we need to hold it, we need to move it to a long-term memory. And that's when you when you want your students to have their vocab, where you want your students to have their vocab, grammar, and everything, systems of the language, pronunciation, and then make it automatic. There are 3 categories of long-term memory. Procedural, this is when you remember how to do something, how to make a soup, how to start a car. That's a process. Semantic, you remember facts, and episodic, you remember events. Language can fall into every category there, and the language helps form new connections within the brain, the new neural connections. But the very important thing for us teachers here is the fact that we need to move from short term to long term, and we don't have much time for that. How do we do that? Well, there are lots of drilling techniques, practice exercises, things like repetition and stuff. There are also games that do 2 things at once. They provide opportunities for English language practice, and they develop memory. Generally, right now, the students who are adults and teenagers as well are quite nicely motivated when they see a bit more benefit than just learning a language. Learning a language and learning something else. Here, we can practice the language and train our memory, for example. The classic memory games here, I have just some of them. Of course, there are many books and resources that can help you with more. Memory games such as associations, you remember something with the help of an association, running dictation, dictogloss, picture different, find the difference between pictures and others. Do you have perhaps your own examples of memory games? Can you share us with us in the chat? And if you don't know one of those, can you please shout out? We're gonna then talk about. I just think that those are classics, classic examples. But if we need to stop at 1 or 2 of them, dictogloss. Okay. Flashcards. Pelmanism, right? Yes. I like that word, pelmanism. It sounds like the dish pelmeni that we have here, very popular. Story cards, flashcards, Quizlet, snowball. Finding missing words, right? Great. Flip-flop. This is when you flip the cards, right? And you have to find the matching ones. Great. Thank you very much. Dictogloss. This is a kind of a bingo, right? Yes, running dictation as well. Okay. So a dictogloss, this is a kind of a dictation. When you say the word dictation to your students, you usually get that reaction. Oh my God, not again. We're not at school. Or, oh my God, dictation. Those are running dictation and dictogloss. Those activities are both about writing and dictation, but in a bit more exciting way. Dictogloss is when you read the text at your normal speed, and then you tell your learners to try and write down as many words as they possibly can. But first time they try and write down all the words that have a meaning in them, meaning nouns, verbs usually go first. We train them how to find words that carry the most of the meaning, we can say that. So the dictogloss is when you read the text. For example, I'm speaking to you and you're trying to write down everything I'm saying. Of course, you're not going to do it fully. So you prepare your learners, you say you leave the spaces and you write down only the important words that you hear, the important words with some space in between, whatever you can. Then you put them in pairs and ask them to compare what they have with each other. One of us heard one thing, another one heard another thing, and then we put that together. Then I read the text again, and you try to fill in those gaps and add more to it. You try to add adjectives, adverbs, perhaps auxiliary verbs, articles, numbers, whatever you hear. And then you go back to your partner and you compare again. Could be the third time, depending on the text, on the level of learners. And it could happen until either you see that the aim is, fulfilled, practicing, you can put inside of the text the lexis, I mean, the vocabulary and the grammar that you need, and practice whatever you need with them. Then there is a running dictation. Yeah, you can Google Dictogloss. It's quite popular, and it's a great activity that integrates skills. They listen, they write, they practice vocab, they practice grammar, they speak to each other. So almost all the skills are integrated. The very important thing here is to prepare them well for that and to explain why. A running dictation, good for adults? Yes, my adults run all the time. Meaning every group that I teach usually runs. So that's when you hang the text, pieces of text on the walls or somewhere around, and ask them, divide them into pairs. And you say that one student is a runner, another one is a writer. And the sentences are far away, well, as far as you can put them in the classroom. One of the students runs to the paper, reads the sentence, runs back and dictates it to their partner. The partner has to listen and to write it down. And then he goes back, remembers another one, dictates, and he writes down. Then they switch. So there should be at least 4 sentences. Usually that's what we recommend. They switch so that they are both in the same roles, and then they can check. Again, great for anything, starting from language presentation to vocab revision, the skills working there, memory works, pronunciation works, kind of a bit of everything. Listening works, writing in terms of spelling. So integrated. Yeah, lots of you are saying some examples in the chat. Thank you very much. Storytelling, word list matching, missing game, drilling a sentence with adding more items. Right. Thank you very much. Then there is a disappearing text, another activity I wanted to share with you today. This is when you write something on the board and then you erase things. So it's kind of a dictogloss other way around. You write, let's say, several sentences on the board, and then you say, okay guys, you have 2 minutes to read it and to try to remember as much as possible. Now you erase all the nouns and you put them back into pairs, and they read the text again and they try to reconstruct it with the words that were there. Then you take out the verbs and ask them to do the same, and until the text disappears fully, and they are then in, say, 5-7 minutes there, they could be amazed themselves from what they can do with a text on the board. There are also several other games, but we're not going to stop there. And then there is also a very important factor in learner motivation, is how our brain memorizes new language. It happens through several ways. Internalization, we internalize everything we receive in terms of language. We store it in the brain. We retrieve it when necessary, and then we use the new language when necessary. And that's a very complex process. And there was a study and the research that was that opened up the curve, the graph that said that we forget things very easily if we do not come back and if we do not repeat them from time to time. It happens not only to the language, to any skill again that you learn. The forgetting curve works like that. You remember 100% now, in 2 days it's going to be 20 if we don't come back to it. And that's just how our brain works. So we keep that in mind when we teach. Our memory, our brain is something like a library. Sometimes when we go back and we take out a necessary book, but we have to know where. If you have such a huge library like the one here, you definitely have to know which row to go and which category to look for. So that's what our brain does, and that's how it, that's a metaphor, of course, categorizes the information. One of the good ways to work with memorizing and memory and not the forgetting curve is a spaced repetition. This is a system of you repeating certain things over time, in one day, in a week, in 2 weeks. So something that you learn and then come back in some time. This is great. This is usually very nicely integrated into course books when you have a vocab, and then in some units you come back to it and you see some words from the previous ones. And that's a good one. And that's what we usually need to aim at using in our curricula. Spaced repetition. We cannot just learn a topic and then forget about it till the end of the semester. We need to come back to it in certain periods of time. That's an example of how you can work with vocab boxes, and what you can revise either every day, every other day, once a week, once every second week, and to review before the test. The box approach, that's what you can Google, vocabulary boxes, spaced repetition, and you can find very interesting ideas there. Some good apps or sites that work with spaced repetition. Quizlet is the most popular one. Then there is Memrise that teaches you vocab, Super Memo develops memories, and flashcards, Enki. I'm sure you can share your own sources. But we are a bit pressed of time, so you can do it in the Telegram chat. And there is a mindset. Generally, there is a study at Stanford University that says that we have two categories of people with growth mindset and fixed mindset. Growth mindset people, yes, I'm sorry about the rectangle. Yeah. Growth mindset people are the ones that take challenges and mistakes as the opportunities to grow. And they are usually optimistic about everything that happens to them. Fixed mindset is the people who have those restraints, limits, and they just don't see how they can overcome the obstacles. So the examples of mindset, growth and fixed, are here. So a person with growth mindset would say, I can learn anything I want to. Tell me I try hard. When I fail, I learn. A fixed mindset, when I fail, I'm no good. I'm either good at it or no. It's a one-time, chance. I don't like to be challenged. That's a fixed mindset. And that's a great research done by Dr. Carol Dweck. That's a professor at Stanford University. She wrote a book, Mindset. I strongly advise everyone to read it. That's something that can change your mind as well and your attitude to many things. That was what happened to me personally. I read that book and I would do it again sometime. Then there is a good one, How We Learn, and Motivating Teenagers. That's Methodology, English Language Teaching. Yes, the rectangle. And then I'm finishing with asking you to share your questions in the Telegram chat. I'll be there at the Q&A session. If you have any questions, let's do that there, and I'll see you very soon in the Q&A session. I'll stay here for the next speakers. We have Lydia, Elena, and Chris preparing to tell you something very interesting and exciting. Thank you very much for being here. Talking to you guys today is just a piece of cake because you are so active, and I hope that you stay like that till the whole day. Thank you. It means a lot when you speak to people and you see some feedback in the chat. That is just perfect.